My name is Mia, and I'm 28 years old. I remember sitting in that exam room, ribs screaming with every breath, when Dr. Cartwright looked into my eyes and said those three words I'd never heard from my own mother: "You're safe now." It was the first time anyone had chosen me over protecting someone else's future. The first time someone saw my pain and didn't ask me to hide it. Before I tell you how I got to that moment, let me tell you why it mattered so much. Before we dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. And if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe. What I'm about to share isn't easy, but it's real. And maybe, just maybe, it'll help someone else find the courage I didn't know I had. Now let me take you back to where it all began. I grew up in what looked like a normal home in the suburbs of Portland, Oregon. White picket fence maple tree in the front yard, neighbors who waved as they walked their dogs. My father died when I was 12 years old in a car accident on Interstate 84 during a winter storm. After that, everything changed. My mother, Linda, was 45 at the time, a nurse at the local hospital. She threw herself into work picking up extra shifts to keep us afloat. But more than that, she threw herself into my brother. Tyler was 4 years older than me, and from the day Dad died, Mom treated him like he was made of gold. I understood it at first. He was the man of the house now, she'd say. He had to be strong. He was brilliant too, straight A's, captain of the debate team, early acceptance to Oregon State University with a full scholarship. Mom would tell anyone who'd listen about her son, the future engineer. I was just Mia, the quiet one, who liked to draw. The first time Tyler hurt me, I was 14 years old. He was home for summer break 18 and stressed about his upcoming sophomore year finals, even though it was months away. I'd been making myself a sandwich in the kitchen, and I accidentally knocked over his water glass. It tipped across the counter and spilled directly onto his laptop, which he'd left open next to the sink. The screen went black instantly. Tyler's face changed in a way I'd never seen before. He stood up so fast his chair fell backward, and before I could apologize, he shoved me. Hard. I stumbled back my knee, slamming into the corner of the kitchen table. Pain shot up my leg, and when I looked down, I could already see the bruise forming dark purple spreading across my kneecap like spilled ink. Mom came running from the laundry room. I thought she'd yell at Tyler, make him apologize something. Instead, she looked at him, then at me, and said, "Tyler's under a lot of stress with his studies. You need to be more careful, Mia." Then she turned to Tyler, touching his arm gently. "It's okay, honey. We'll get it fixed." I stood there holding my knee, confused. Wasn't I the one who got hurt? But I swallowed my words. Maybe Mom was right. Maybe I should have been more careful. That became the pattern. Every time Tyler came home for holidays or summer break, there'd be an incident. When I was 15, I forgot to pick up the specific brand of energy drinks he'd asked for from the store. He punched my arm hard enough to leave a bruise that lasted 2 weeks. Mom said he was just playing around. "You're too sensitive." When I was 16, we argued over which TV show to watch. It was my turn to pick. I'd waited all week, but Tyler wanted to watch a basketball game. When I didn't give in, he grabbed my hair and dragged me off the couch. I hit my elbow on the coffee table on the way down. Mom walked in just as I was getting up, tears streaming down my face. She sighed and said, "Why do you always have to push his buttons, Mia? You know he's working on his thesis." I learned to make myself small when Tyler was around. I'd tiptoe through the house, speak softly, agree with everything he said. I became an expert at reading his moods, at knowing when to disappear into my room. My friends at school, Jessica and Sarah, would ask why I couldn't hang out certain weekends. I'd make up excuses. I was too ashamed to tell them the truth. What would they think of me if they knew my own brother scared me? What would they think of my family? I graduated high school with decent grades. Nothing spectacular like Tyler's. I applied to community college for graphic design. It was what I loved. But Mom called it impractical. "You need to think about job security," she'd say. "Not everyone can afford to chase dreams. Only people like Tyler with real talent can do that." I went anyway, paid for it myself with money from my part-time job at a coffee shop. 2 years later, I graduated with an associate's degree and got a job at a small design studio in Portland. The pay was modest, barely enough to cover rent if I moved out, so I stayed home. It seemed like the practical choice at the time. I wish I'd known what it would cost me. Tyler graduated with his engineering degree and landed a job at a major tech company in the city. He made six figures right out of college. Mom was beside herself with pride. She'd show his business card to the neighbors, to the ladies at church, to the cashier at the grocery store. My son, the engineer. Tyler got his own apartment downtown, a sleek one-bedroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. But he still came home on weekends, usually when he was stressed or when Mom made his favorite meals. I was 23 years old, working full-time, paying rent to Mom, even though I was her daughter, and I still felt like I was walking on eggshells in my own home. The incidents had decreased since Tyler lived elsewhere, but when he visited, the old fear would creep back in. I'd feel my shoulders tense when I heard his car in the driveway. I'd check and double-check that I hadn't left anything of mine in his way. It was a Friday evening in October when everything shattered. I was 23 and Tyler was 27. He'd shown up around 6 o'clock, his jaw tight, his movements sharp. I was in the kitchen cooking dinner pasta with marinara sauce. Nothing fancy. Mom was working a late shift at the hospital and wouldn't be home until 9. I heard Tyler slam the front door. That was my first warning. He walked straight to the kitchen, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and downed half of it in one go. I kept my eyes on the pot of boiling water stirring quietly, hoping he'd go to the living room, or up to his old bedroom. "How was work?" I asked, trying to sound casual, friendly even. He turned to look at me, and I could see it in his eyes. That look, the one that meant he was already angry about something that had nothing to do with me, but I'd still pay for it. "What do you know about real work?" he snapped. "You just play with colors all day while I'm actually building things that matter." His voice was getting louder. "Do you have any idea what it's like to have a manager who doesn't understand basic engineering concepts? To have deadlines that are impossible, to carry an entire project on your shoulders?" "I'm sorry you're having a hard time," I said quietly, turning back to the stove. I didn't know what else to say. I never did. "You're sorry," he repeated, his voice mocking. "That's all you ever say. Sorry, sorry, sorry. Do you ever actually do anything, or do you just apologize for existing?" That stung. I felt my face flush, but I kept stirring the pasta, counting in my head. He'd calm down. He always did eventually. I just had to wait it out. But then I made a mistake. I tried to defend myself. I do work hard, actually. I had 3 client presentations this week, and he moved so fast I didn't see it coming. One moment he was across the kitchen, the next his hand was on my shoulder, spinning me around. "You think your little art projects are work?" He shoved me backward. I stumbled, my back hitting the edge of the counter. The pot handle jabbed into my side and I gasped. "Tyler, please," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" He shoved me again, harder this time. My hip hit the corner of the counter pane, radiating outward. I tried to step around him to get away, but he blocked my path. His face was red veins standing out on his neck, and I realized he'd had more than just that one beer. I could smell alcohol on his breath, stale and sharp. "You always do this," he yelled, "always trying to compare yourself to me. You're nothing like me. You're just a burden on this family. Do you know how much easier Mom's life would be if she only had to worry about me?" Tears were streaming down my face now, but I couldn't speak. My throat was closed up with fear and hurt and confusion. Then it happened. I tried to move past him one more time and he exploded. He grabbed the front of my shirt and threw me backward. I crashed into the small kitchen table, felt my side connect with the edge of a chair. Then he was on me, yelling, and I felt his fist connect with my ribs once, twice. The pain was like nothing I'd ever experienced, sharp and all-consuming, stealing my breath. I couldn't scream, I couldn't breathe. I just curled up, trying to protect myself, waiting for it to stop. It did stop, but only because Mom came home early. She must have switched shifts. I heard her voice, high and alarmed. "Tyler! Stop, Tyler!" He stepped back. I stayed on the floor, gasping each breath, sending waves of agony through my chest. Mom knelt beside me, but she wasn't checking my injuries. She was looking at Tyler, her hand on his arm. "Go upstairs," she said to him. "Go cool off." And he did. He just walked away like nothing had happened. I lay there, tears mixing with the sweat on my face, pain radiating from my right side with every tiny movement. Mom finally looked at me. "Can you get up?" I tried. I really did. But when I put weight on my left side to push myself up, The pain in my ribs intensified so badly that I cried out and collapsed back down. Mom helped me to the couch. She brought ice wrapped in a dish towel and pressed it against my side. I winced, biting my lip to keep from screaming. The ice helped a little, numbing the surface, but the deep ache remained throbbing in time with my heartbeat. Then Mom said the words that would echo in my head for months. "Mia, you can't tell anyone about this." She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at the wall, her jaw set. "Tyler has a future. A real future. He's under so much pressure at work, and this could ruin everything he's worked for. Do you understand?" I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. "Mom, he broke something. I think I need to go to the hospital." She shook her head firmly. "We'll wait and see. It's probably just bruised. If you go to the hospital, they'll ask questions. Tyler could lose his job. He could go to jail. Is that what you want? To destroy your brother's life over an accident?" An accident. She called it an accident. I didn't say anything else. I just lay there on the couch, ice pressed to my side, feeling more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Mom got up and went to check on Tyler. I heard their muffled voices upstairs, heard her comforting him, telling him it would be okay. Nobody came to comfort me. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I tried to shift position, the pain would spike. Lying flat hurt. Lying on my side was impossible. I finally managed to prop myself up with pillows semi-reclined and stayed that way. Until dawn, drifting in and out of consciousness, each breath shallow and careful. The next day, Saturday, the pain was worse. It wasn't just my ribs anymore. My whole torso felt like it was on fire. I tried to get out of bed, but the simple act of swinging my legs over the side made me gasp and clutch my side. I called out for Mom, but she didn't come. Later, I found a note on the kitchen counter. She'd gone to work. Tyler was gone too, back to his apartment probably. I spent Saturday alone, moving from the couch to the bathroom, and back each trip an ordeal. I couldn't eat. The thought of food made me nauseous, and besides, I couldn't make it to the kitchen to prepare anything. I drank water from the bathroom tap and waited for the pain to get better. It didn't. Sunday was the same. Mom came and went, working different shifts. When she was home, she'd peek into the living room where I was camped out, ask if I was feeling better, and then disappear into her room or the kitchen. She didn't mention Tyler. She didn't ask if I needed anything. It was like if we didn't talk about it, it hadn't really happened. By Monday morning, I knew something was seriously wrong. The pain hadn't decreased at all. In fact, it felt worse. When I tried to take a deep breath, I couldn't. My chest would only expand halfway before the pain stopped me. And when I coughed, which I'd started doing because my shallow breathing was making my lungs feel tight, the pain was so intense I saw stars. I called in sick to work, telling my supervisor I had the flu. Then I sat on the couch for another hour trying to convince myself I could handle this, that it would heal on its own, that I didn't need to disobey Mom's instructions. But around noon, I coughed again, and this time I tasted something metallic. I spit into my hand and saw a tiny speck of blood. That scared me more than anything else. I grabbed my keys, barely able to pull on a jacket over my pajamas, and somehow made it to my car. Every movement was agony. Turning the steering wheel, pressing the pedals, even the gentle vibration of the engine sent shocks of pain through my torso. The urgent care clinic was only 15 minutes away, but it felt like an hour. I parked in the closest spot I could find and sat there for a moment, staring at the building. If I went in, there'd be questions. If there were questions, I'd have to lie or tell the truth. If I lied, they might not treat me properly. If I told the truth, Tyler's life would be ruined. Mom would never forgive me. But I couldn't breathe. And there was blood. I got out of the car and walked into the clinic, each step measured and slow. The waiting room was half full, people with various ailments reading magazines or scrolling on their phones. I approached the front desk where a woman with kind eyes and gray hair looked up at me. She took one look at my face, probably saw how pale I was, how carefully I was holding my side, and immediately handed me a clipboard. "Fill this out, honey. We'll get you back as soon as possible." My hand shook as I wrote my information. When I got to the section that asked about the injury, I paused at the question, How did this occur? I stared at the blank line pen hovering. Finally, I wrote, fell down the stairs. It took me nearly 20 minutes to complete the form because I had to keep stopping to breathe through the pain. When I returned it to the desk, the receptionist glanced at it and nodded. Have a seat. It shouldn't be long. 15 minutes later, a nurse called my name. Karen, her name tag read. She was around 50, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun and wire-rimmed glasses. She led me to a small exam room, had me step on a scale, took my blood pressure and temperature, and asked me basic questions about my medical history. So you fell down the stairs, she said, looking at the form. When did this happen? 3 days ago, I answered quietly. Her eyebrows rose slightly. And you're just now coming in. I thought it would get better on its own. She nodded, making notes. Dr. Cartwright will be in shortly. I sat on the exam table, the paper crinkling beneath me, and waited. The room was small and sterile, the usual medical posters on the walls about hand washing and flu shots. I focused on a chart showing the bones of the human body, tracing the outline of the rib cage with my eyes. Then the door opened, and Dr. Helen Cartwright walked in. She was around 55, with short brown hair, metal-rimmed glasses, and a calm, assessing expression. She glanced at the chart in her hand, then looked at me. Mia, she said, pulling up a rolling stool and sitting down so we were at eye level. I'm Dr. Cartwright. I understand you took a fall. Can you tell me what happened? I repeated the lie I'd written. I fell down the stairs at home. Hit my side on the railing. She nodded slowly. Which stair did you fall from? Top, middle, bottom? I hesitated. Near the top. So you fell from near the top and hit the railing on the way down. Did you hit anything else? Maybe the steps. I don't really remember. It happened fast. Dr. Cartwright made a note. I'm going to need to examine you. Can you remove your jacket and lift your shirt? My hands trembled as I unzipped my jacket and carefully pulled it off. Even that small movement made me wince. I lifted the edge of my shirt, exposing my right side. I heard Dr. Cartwright's sharp intake of breath. The bruise had spread since I'd last looked at it. What had been a few dark purple marks on Friday night was now a massive discoloration covering my entire right side, from just below my armpit down to my hip. The worst part, the part right over my ribs, was almost black. Dr. Cartwright leaned closer, her expression neutral, but her eyes sharp. She gently touched the edges of the bruise, then more carefully probed the center. When she pressed directly over my ribs, I gasped and jerked back. I need to listen to your lungs, she said, pulling out her stethoscope. Take a deep breath for me. I tried, but I couldn't. The breath caught halfway, pain stopping it like a wall. As deep as you can, she encouraged. I managed a slightly deeper breath, but it hurt so much tears sprang to my eyes. She moved the stethoscope to several locations on my back and chest, listening intently. Then she sat back. Mia, I need to be straight with you. Based on what I'm seeing and hearing, I believe you have fractured ribs. We need to get an X-ray to confirm and see how severe it is. But I need to ask you something first, and I need you to be honest with me. She pulled her stool closer, her eyes locked on mine. The pattern of this bruising doesn't look like a fall injury. It looks like impact trauma. Blunt force. Did someone hit you? My throat went dry. No, I fell. Dr. Cartwright didn't look away. She didn't blink. She just kept looking at me with those steady, knowing eyes. Mia. I've been a doctor for 32 years. I've seen countless injuries from falls, and I've seen countless injuries from assaults. This is not consistent with a fall down the stairs. I looked down at my hands twisting in my lap. I fell, I repeated, but my voice was barely a whisper. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, if you're protecting someone, you need to know that it's not your job to do that. Your job is to take care of yourself. And my job is to help you do that. But I can't do my job if you don't tell me the truth. Something in her voice cracked open the dam I'd been building for 3 days. Tears spilled over, and I couldn't stop them. I covered my face with my hands, shoulders shaking, each sob sending fresh waves of pain through my ribs. Dr. Cartwright didn't rush me. She just waited, sitting quietly, a box of tissues within reach. Finally, I looked up at her. "My brother," I whispered. "He got angry. But it was an accident. He didn't mean to hurt me this badly." "Did he hit you?" she asked gently. I nodded, unable to say it out loud. More than once I nodded again. Dr. Cartwright took a slow breath. "Where is your brother now?" "He lives in his own apartment downtown. He was visiting and he'd had a bad day at work and I said something that upset him and—" "Mia," she interrupted gently but firmly. "There is no excuse for what he did to you. None. I don't care what kind of day he had or what you said. No one has the right to hurt you like this. Do you understand that?" I shook my head. "You don't understand. He has a future. He's an engineer at a big company. My mom said if anyone finds out, it could ruin his life. She told me to stay quiet." Dr. Cartwright's expression hardened. "And what about your life? What about your future?" I didn't have an answer for that. I'd never thought about it that way. She stood up. "Here's what's going to happen. First, we're going to get you x-rayed and properly treated. Then I'm going to have our social worker come talk to you. Her name is Angela, and she specializes in helping people in your situation. And finally, I'm legally obligated to report this. What happened to you is assault, and it's a crime." Panic seized me. "No, please. If you report it, he'll know I told. It'll get worse, and my mom will never forgive me." Dr. Cartwright knelt down so we were eye level again. "Listen to me very carefully. You are not safe in that house. If he did this once, he will do it again. And next time it might not be ribs. It might be your skull, it might be internal bleeding. I cannot in good conscience send you back to a place where someone has already put you in the hospital. But I didn't come to the hospital. I came to urgent care." A sad smile crossed her face. "Mia, these kinds of injuries should be treated in an emergency room. The fact that you came here instead of the ER tells me how scared you are of anyone finding out. But I found out, and now I'm going to help you whether you think you want it or not." She called for Karen to take me to X-ray. The process was painful, having to hold different positions while the machine captured images of my bones. Each movement felt like knives slicing through my torso. When it was over, Karen helped me back to the exam room and told me Dr. Cartwright would return with the results shortly. I sat alone for about 30 minutes, my mind racing. What had I done? I'd broken Mom's rule. I'd told someone. Tyler would find out. Mom would find out. Everything would fall apart. But another part of me, a small voice I'd been suppressing for years, whispered, "Maybe it needs to fall apart." Dr. Cartwright returned with film sheets in her hand. She clipped them onto a light box on the wall and flipped the switch. The X-rays lit up, showing the ghostly white outline of my ribs against the black background. She pointed to 3 specific areas on the right side. "You have 3 fractured ribs. Here, here, and here." She traced her finger along the breaks. "These are displaced fractures, which means the bone has actually shifted out of alignment. This is a serious injury, Mia." I stared at the images, seeing the breaks clearly, now thin, dark lines cutting through the white bones. "The pattern of these fractures," she continued, "is absolutely consistent with blunt force trauma. This was not caused by a fall. This was caused by someone striking you with significant force, likely multiple times." I couldn't argue anymore. The evidence was right there, glowing on the wall. A knock came at the door and a woman entered. She was around 38 with long dark hair and warm brown eyes. "Hi, Mia, I'm Angela Martinez. I'm the social worker here at the clinic." Dr. Cartwright excused herself, saying she'd start the paperwork for my treatment, but Angela sat down in the chair she'd vacated. For the next hour, Angela talked to me. She explained what domestic violence was, and I was surprised to learn it included violence between siblings, not just romantic partners. She told me about my rights, about protective orders, about shelters where I could stay if I didn't feel safe going home. "I don't know if I can do this," I told her, my voice small. "He's my brother. And my mom. She thinks I'm overreacting." Angela's expression was gentle but serious. "Your mother is enabling abuse. That's unfortunately very common. She's choosing to protect the abuser instead of the victim. But you have a choice too. You can choose to protect yourself. But won't this ruin his life? Isn't that what everyone will say, that I ruined his future?" Angela leaned forward. Mia, he made a choice when he hurt you. He chose violence. Whatever consequences come from that are the results of his actions, not yours. You didn't do this to him. He did it to himself the moment he raised his hand against you. We talked for another 30 minutes. Angela gave me pamphlets, phone numbers, resources. She explained that Dr. Cartwright would be filing a report with the police as required by Oregon law when there's evidence of assault causing significant injury. A detective would likely contact me within 24 hours. Then she asked the question I'd been dreading. Where do you plan to go when you leave here today? I thought about going home facing Mom, having to explain where I'd been. I thought about Tyler potentially showing up again. I thought about sleeping in that house, knowing what had happened there, knowing nobody had protected me. I can't go home, I whispered. Angela nodded. I can arrange for you to stay at a shelter tonight. It's a safe location, completely confidential. You'll have a private room, and there are counselors there who can help you figure out your next steps. Okay, I said. Okay. Dr. Cartwright came back with prescriptions for pain medication and detailed instructions for caring for fractured ribs. Rest ice, avoid heavy lifting, take shallow breaths to prevent pneumonia, but try to expand the lungs gradually. The ribs would heal on their own over 6 to 8 weeks. There wasn't much else to be done medically except manage the pain and watch for complications like punctured lungs. She also handed me a card with her personal cell phone number handwritten on the back. If you need anything, call me. Anytime, day or night, I mean that. I took the card, my eyes filling with tears again. Thank you, I managed to say. Thank you for seeing me, for really seeing me. She squeezed my hand. You're safe now, Mia. It's going to be hard, but you're going to be okay. Angela drove me to the shelter in her own car since I was on pain medication and shouldn't drive. The shelter was a large 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by tall fences and security cameras. Nothing about it screamed shelter from the outside. It just looked like a regular home. Inside, I was greeted by a woman named Rachel Adams, one of the counselors. She was 42 with kind eyes and a calm demeanor that immediately put me at ease. She showed me to a small room on the second floor. It had a twin bed with a handmade quilt, a dresser, a small desk, and a window overlooking the backyard. This is yours for as long as you need it, Rachel said. We have communal meals downstairs, but there's also a kitchenette on this floor if you want privacy. House rules are simple respect. Others attend at least one group session per week, and check in with staff if you're leaving the property. She gave me a bag of toiletries, some clean clothes in approximately my size, and left me alone to rest. I lay down on the bed, finally able to lie flat with the help of the pain medication Dr. Cartwright had prescribed. The room was quiet, safe. For the first time in 3 days, I felt like I could breathe both literally and figuratively. But as I lay there, my phone started buzzing. I'd turned it off during the X-ray and forgotten to turn it back on. Now the notifications came flooding in. 25 missed calls from Mom, 16 text messages. I opened them with shaking hands. Mom, where are you, Mom? Mia, answer your phone. Mom, this isn't funny. I'm worried. Mom, call me right now. And then later, the police came to the house. What did you do? My stomach dropped. It had already started. I called Mom back, my heart pounding. She answered on the first ring. Where are you? I've been worried sick. I'm safe. What do you mean safe? Come home right now. I can't. I went to the doctor. They know what happened. Silence. Then her voice cold. What did you tell them? The truth. How could you? Do you know what you've done? Tyler could lose his job. The police came here this morning asking questions. How could you do this to your own brother? My chest tightened, and not from the broken ribs. Mom, he broke 3 of my ribs. 3. I couldn't breathe. I was coughing up blood. It was an accident, she insisted. He didn't mean to hurt you that badly. That doesn't make it okay. You're being selfish. You're destroying this family. Come home right now and tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I can't do that. Then you're choosing him over your family, over me. I'm choosing myself, I said quietly. For once, I'm choosing myself. She was silent for a long moment. Then I can't believe you do this. After everything I've done for you, after everything Tyler has accomplished, You're willing to throw it all away. He threw it away when he put his hands on me. I said, my voice stronger now. And you threw it away when you told me to stay quiet about it. Don't you dare blame me for this. I'm not blaming you for what he did. I'm blaming you for protecting him instead of me. She hung up. I sat there holding the phone, tears streaming down my face. Rachel must have heard me crying because she knocked softly and came in. She didn't say anything at first, just sat beside me on the bed and handed me tissues. She called you, Rachel said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. Let me guess. She wants you to come home and recant your story. I nodded again. That's textbook enabler behavior, Rachel said gently. She's been protecting him for so long that she can't see what she's doing is wrong. In her mind, she's holding the family together. She doesn't realize she's asking you to sacrifice yourself to do it. What if I am being selfish, I asked. What if I am ruining his life? Rachel took my hand. Mia, look at me. What he did to you is a crime. It's assault. If he did this to a stranger on the street, he'd be arrested immediately. The fact that he's your brother doesn't make it okay. It makes it worse because he's supposed to protect you, not hurt you. Over the next few days, I slowly began to believe her. The detective came to see me the next afternoon. Detective James Sullivan was around 50 years old, tall, with graying hair, and a patient, methodical manner. He sat across from me in one of the shelter's private meeting rooms and explained the investigation process. I need you to tell me everything he said. Start from the beginning. So I did. I told him about the years of smaller incidents, how Mom always made excuses, how I'd learned to stay out of Tyler's way. I told him about Friday night, about every detail I could remember. He took notes, asked clarifying questions, never rushed me. When I was done, he said, I'm going to be honest with you. These cases are difficult because they're family, and juries sometimes struggle with that. But the medical evidence is strong. The x-rays, the bruising pattern, Dr. Cartwright's expert testimony. We have a solid case if you're willing to pursue it. What happens to him? I asked. Detective Sullivan explained the process. Tyler would be arrested and charged with assault in the second degree. There'd be an arraignment, possibly a trial if he didn't take a plea deal. If convicted, he could face jail time, probation, mandatory counseling, and a restraining order. Your mother might not forgive you, he said bluntly. Other family members might take his side. This is going to be hard. But it's the right thing to do both for your safety and to hold him accountable. I thought about it for a long time. Then I asked, what if I say no? What if I don't want to press charges? The state can still prosecute without your cooperation because of the severity of the injuries. But it's much harder. And honestly, Mia, if you don't do this now, what happens the next time he gets angry? Or what if he hurts someone else? That thought hadn't occurred to me. What if Tyler had a girlfriend someday? A wife? Kids? Would he hurt them too? I'll do it, I said. I'll cooperate with the prosecution. Within 48 hours, Tyler was arrested. Detective Sullivan called to let me know. He'd been taken into custody at his apartment, booked and released on bail, with conditions that he stay away from me and from Mom's house. Mom called me that evening. I almost didn't answer, but part of me hoped maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe she'd apologize. I hope you're happy were her first words. They arrested him at work. His boss saw him being led out in handcuffs. He'll probably lose his job now. He should lose his job, I said. He committed a crime. You've ruined him. You've ruined our family. How am I supposed to face people at church, at work? Everyone's going to know my son is an abuser because of you. Because of me, I repeated, incredulous. I didn't make him hit me, Mom. If you'd just been more careful, if you hadn't provoked him. I walked in front of the TV, I interrupted. That's what I did. I walked in front of the TV for 3 seconds during a football game, and his response was to break my ribs. How is that my fault? She didn't have an answer. After a moment, she said, if you really cared about this family, you'd drop the charges. Tell them it was all a mistake. No. Then don't bother coming home. You're not welcome here anymore. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there in my small shelter room, staring at the phone. I'd just lost my mother. But the truth was, I'd lost her a long time ago. I'd just been too afraid to admit it. 2 days later, I received official notice that a protective order had been granted. Tyler was legally barred from coming within 500 feet of me. If he violated it, he'd be arrested immediately. Rachel helped me process everything in our counseling sessions. She taught me about gaslighting, about how abusers and their enablers manipulate victims into thinking they're the problem. She helped me see that mom's behavior wasn't love. It was control disguised as family loyalty. One evening, about a week after I'd moved into the shelter, my phone rang from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. It was Tyler. "Mia, we need to talk." "You're not supposed to contact me," I said immediately. "I'm calling from a friend's phone. Just hear me out." "I'm sorry, okay, I didn't mean to hurt you that badly. But you didn't have to go to the cops. You've completely destroyed my life." "I destroyed your life. You broke my ribs. It was an accident. You know I have anger issues. You should have been more careful." I felt anger rise in me, hot and sharp. "You're actually blaming me right now for you hitting me. I'm just saying if you really cared about family, you'd drop this. Mom is devastated. Do you want to destroy her too?" "Don't put this on me. You did this. You chose to hit me. Everything that's happening now is because of your choices, not mine." "Fine," he said, his voice turning cold. "But remember this. Everyone knows you're the one who called the cops on your own brother, your own family. Good luck living with that." He hung up before I could respond. I was shaking, but not from fear this time. I was angry. For years, I'd made myself small to accommodate his rage. I'd apologized for things that weren't my fault. I'd protected him at the expense of myself. And he'd just proven that he still didn't think he'd done anything wrong. I told Rachel about the call. She immediately reported it to Detective Sullivan, and within hours, Tyler was served with a warning about violating the no-contact order. If he tried to reach me again, there would be additional charges. Over the next few weeks, I settled into life at the shelter. I attended group therapy sessions with other women who'd experienced family violence. Their stories were different from mine in the details, but heartbreakingly similar in the patterns. We supported each other, shared resources, cried together, and slowly began to heal together. I also started looking for my own apartment. With help from a program the shelter connected me to, I found a small one-bedroom place about 20 minutes from my job. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, and most importantly, it was safe. 3 months after that night in the kitchen, I moved into my own space. The trial date was set for early spring. In the months leading up to it, I worked with Amanda Foster, the assistant district attorney assigned to the case. She was 45 sharp and determined, with a reputation for taking domestic violence cases seriously. "We're going to hold him accountable," she promised me. "But you need to be prepared. His lawyer is going to try to discredit you to make it seem like you're exaggerating or lying. Stay calm, stick to the truth, and remember that the evidence is on your side." I spent weeks preparing my testimony, going over the events again and again until I could recite them without falling apart. I practiced staying calm under hostile questioning. I looked at photos of my bruises at my x-rays, steeling myself for having to discuss them in open court. The first day of trial arrived on a cold March morning. I wore a simple navy blue dress that Rachel helped me pick out. Professional, but not too formal. I wanted the jury to see me as a real person. Not a victim or a villain, just someone telling the truth. The courthouse was imposing, all marble and high ceilings. Amanda met me outside and walked me through what would happen. Opening statements, then witness testimony, then closing arguments. She estimated it would take 2 days. We entered the courtroom, and that's when I saw Tyler for the first time since October. He was sitting at the defense table with his lawyer, Robert Hayes, a man in his mid-50s wearing an expensive gray suit. Tyler looked different. Thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, his hair not quite as neatly trimmed as usual. When he saw me, his expression flickered just for a moment, with something I couldn't quite read. Anger, shame, fear. Behind him in the gallery sat Mom. She was dressed in black tissues clutched in her hand, looking every inch the grieving mother. She didn't look at me. The judge entered and we all rose. Judge Patricia Hendricks was a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and no-nonsense demeanor. She instructed the jury, explained the charges, and then nodded to Amanda to begin. Amanda's opening statement was clear and powerful. She laid out exactly what Tyler had done, supported by medical evidence, and argued that this was a clear case of assault regardless of family relationship. Then Robert Hayes stood for the defense. He painted Tyler as a hardworking young man under immense pressure, who'd made one terrible mistake in a moment of stress. He suggested I was making it seem worse than it was that siblings fight, and sometimes it goes too far that this didn't warrant criminal prosecution. I felt sick listening to him minimize what had happened to me. Then it was time for testimony. Amanda called Dr. Cartwright first. She was professional and unshakable on the stand, explaining the injuries, showing the x-rays to the jury, testifying that, in her expert medical opinion, these injuries were absolutely consistent with intentional assault. When Hayes cross-examined her, trying to suggest the injuries could have been from a fall, she didn't budge. In 32 years of practice, I have never seen a fall produce this pattern of injury. These fractures were caused by blunt force trauma, multiple impacts to the same area. Next, Detective Sullivan testified about his investigation, the photos he'd taken, the statements he'd collected. Then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand, my legs shaking, and placed my hand on the Bible to be sworn in. I sat down, looked out at the courtroom, and saw all those faces watching me. The jury, 12 strangers, who would decide if what happened to me mattered. The lawyers, the judge, Mom with her tissues, Tyler staring at the table. Amanda approached me with a kind smile. "Mia, can you tell the jury what happened on the evening of October 19th? I took a breath and began. I described the day Tyler coming home angry, the conversation that escalated the shoving, and finally the punches. I described the pain, Mom's reaction, her telling me to stay quiet. "And why did you wait 3 days to seek medical treatment?" Amanda asked. "Because my mother told me that going to the doctor would ruin Tyler's future. She told me to stay quiet. She said he had worked too hard for one mistake to destroy everything. I didn't want to hurt him, so I tried to handle it on my own. But the pain got worse, and I started coughing blood, and I got scared." Amanda showed me photos of my bruises taken at the clinic. "Are these accurate representations of what your injuries looked like that day?" I looked at them, at the massive purple and black discoloration across my entire torso. "Yes." "And these x-rays showing 3 fractured ribs, are these yours?" "Yes." Amanda sat down and Hayes stood up for cross-examination. He was aggressive, trying to shake my story. "Isn't it true that you and Tyler used to roughhouse as children, sometimes when we were very young?" "But this wasn't roughhousing. I was 23 years old and he broke my ribs." "But you admit you walked in front of the television during an important game, knowing it would upset him." "I was in my own home, walking from the kitchen to the stairs. I had no idea he was watching TV. And even if I did, that doesn't give him permission to assault me." Hayes pushed and pushed, suggesting I was exaggerating, that I was angry at Tyler for being more successful, that I wanted attention. But I stayed calm, just like Amanda had taught me. I answered every question honestly and without emotion. Finally, Hayes asked, "If this was really so serious, why didn't you call the police yourself? Why did you let a doctor do it?" "Because I was terrified," I said quietly. "Terrified of Tyler. Terrified of my mother's reaction. Terrified that no one would believe me. I've spent my entire life being told that Tyler's future matters more than anything else, including my safety. It took a doctor, a complete stranger, to tell me that I mattered too." I saw a few jurors nodding. Hayes sat down. The defense called Mom to testify. She took the stand and painted Tyler as a devoted son under stress, someone who'd never been violent before, who'd simply had a momentary lapse in judgment. Hayes asked, "Do you believe your son intended to seriously hurt your daughter?" Mom's voice wavered. "No. I think it was an accident that got out of hand. Tyler loves his sister. He would never intentionally harm her." But Amanda destroyed that narrative on cross-examination. "Mrs. Stevens," she said, approaching the witness stand, "you witnessed your son punch your daughter hard enough to break 3 of her ribs, correct? It happened very fast. But you saw it, yes. And what did you do immediately after I told Tyler to go upstairs and calm down? Did you call 911? No. Did you take your daughter to the emergency room? Not right away, no. In fact, you told her to stay quiet about what happened, didn't you?" Mom hesitated. I didn't want things to escalate. I thought we could handle it within the family. By handle it, you mean sweep it under the rug so Tyler wouldn't face consequences. That's not fair. I was trying to protect both of my children. Were you? Because it seems like you were only trying to protect one of them. You told Mia that Tyler had a future and that she shouldn't ruin it. Did you ever consider that Mia has a future too? That she has a right to be safe in her own home? Mom started crying. I love both my children. But you only asked one of them to stay silent about being assaulted. You only prioritized one of their futures. Isn't that true? Mom didn't answer. She just cried harder. The trial lasted 2 full days. Closing arguments were powerful on both sides, but I felt like the truth was clear. The jury deliberated for 4 hours before returning. We all stood as they filed back in. The forewoman, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, handed the verdict to the bailiff, who handed it to the judge. Judge Hendricks read it silently, then looked up. On the charge of assault in the second degree, how do you find we find the defendant guilty? The courtroom erupted in whispers. I felt Amanda grab my hand, squeezing it tight. We did it, she whispered. Tyler sat frozen at the defense table. Hayes put a hand on his shoulder. Mom sobbed loudly in the gallery. But I felt something I hadn't felt in months. I felt vindicated. A jury of 12 people had looked at the evidence and decided that what happened to me mattered, that Tyler was responsible for his actions, that I had a right to justice. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Judge Hendricks sentenced Tyler to 18 months of work release, meaning he could work during the day, but had to return to a facility at night. 2 years of probation after that, 100 hours of community service, mandatory completion of an anger management program, and the protective order was extended for 5 years. It wasn't prison, but it was accountability. As we left the courthouse that day, I saw a group of women waiting outside. They were from my support group at the shelter. They cheered when they saw me holding signs that said, "We believe you and you are brave." Rachel was there, and Angela and even Dr. Cartwright had come to show support. For the first time in my life, I felt surrounded by people who chose me, who believed me, who stood by me. The months after the trial were about rebuilding. I focused on my work at the design studio, taking on more clients, building my portfolio. My boss, David Park, had been incredibly supportive throughout the whole process, giving me flexible hours when I needed them, and never making me feel guilty for taking care of myself. One of my coworkers, Emma Wright, became a close friend. She'd ask me to lunch, to movies, just normal things that made me feel like a regular person again instead of a victim. Through Emma, I met more people, built a social life separate from the trauma I'd experienced. I reconnected with Jessica and Sarah, my old high school friends. When I finally told them everything, they were horrified. "I wish you told us," Jessica said, tears in her eyes. "We could have helped you. I was too ashamed. I thought it was my fault." Sarah hugged me tight. "It was never your fault. Not once." About 4 months after the trial, Mom texted me, "Can we talk?" I was hesitant, but I agreed to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. When I arrived, she was already there, looking older and more tired than I remembered. We sat across from each other in uncomfortable silence for a moment. Then Mom spoke. "I've been thinking a lot. About everything." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I talked to a therapist. She helped me see some things I didn't want to see, like what I asked cautiously, like how I failed you, how I chose Tyler over you again and again, how I asked you to sacrifice your safety to protect his reputation." She looked up at me, eyes red. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I'm so deeply sorry." It was what I'd wanted to hear for months, but now that I was hearing it, I felt numb. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you always choose him?" she sighed. "After your father died, Tyler was all I had left of him. Your dad was so proud of Tyler, had such high hopes for him. I felt like if I failed Tyler, I'd be failing your father's memory. And I got so caught up in his achievements and what he represented that I stopped seeing him clearly. I stopped seeing you clearly. I did matter, Mom. I mattered just as much as he did. I know that now. But I didn't see it then. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. It was easier to make excuses to tell myself it wasn't that bad than to admit my son was capable of violence. We talked for over an hour. Mom asked if I could forgive her, and I told her honestly that I didn't know yet. Forgiveness wasn't something I could just decide to give. It would take time, maybe years, maybe forever. But I said I was willing to try to rebuild our relationship if she was willing to do the work. That meant continuing therapy, setting boundaries, and never asking me to excuse or minimize what Tyler had done. She agreed. Over the next year, we met once a month for coffee or lunch. The conversations were sometimes awkward, sometimes painful, but gradually we found our way to something that resembled a relationship. It would never be what it was before because what it was before wasn't healthy, but maybe it could become something better. I didn't have contact with Tyler at all. I heard through Mom that he'd completed the anger management program, that he was fulfilling his work release requirements, that he'd lost his job at the tech company, but found something else at a smaller firm with lower pay. Meanwhile, my own life blossomed. I started taking on freelance design work outside my regular job, building a portfolio that focused on nonprofit organizations and social causes. One of my biggest projects was designing a comprehensive awareness campaign for a domestic violence prevention organization. The director, Patricia Moore, was so impressed with my work that she invited me to join their advisory board. Through that position, I started speaking at workshops and events, sharing my story with others who'd experienced similar trauma. It was terrifying at first, standing in front of strangers and talking about the worst period of my life. But every time I did it, someone would come up to me afterward and say, "Thank you, I needed to hear that." Or, "You just gave me the courage to leave." Or, "I thought I was the only one." And I realized that my experience, as painful as it was, could help others. That maybe everything I'd been through had a purpose. I also started dating again. I'd been so focused on survival and healing that romance had been the last thing on my mind. But then I met Nathan Clark at a friend's party. He was 31, a software engineer who was nothing like Tyler, despite the similar profession. Nathan was gentle, thoughtful, patient. When I told him about my past, he didn't run. He listened, asked how he could support me, and never made me feel broken. We took things slowly, and for the first time in my life, I was in a relationship where I felt safe and valued. I also had a yearly checkup with Dr. Cartwright. The ribs had healed completely, though I sometimes got phantom pains when the weather changed. During one visit, she asked me how I was doing overall. "Better," I said. "Some days are still hard, but I'm okay. Really okay." She smiled. "I'm proud of you, Mia. What you did standing up for yourself, going through that trial, it took incredible courage." "I couldn't have done it without you," I said honestly. "If you hadn't believed me that day, if you hadn't pushed me to get help, I don't know where I'd be right now." "I just did my job," she said. "You did the hard part." As I left her office that day, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living, building a life I chose, surrounded by people who respected and cared for me. I had boundaries. I had self-worth. I had a future that was mine to shape. One year after the trial, I stood on a stage at a conference center downtown. It was a domestic violence awareness event, and I'd been invited to speak. The room was filled with hundreds of people, survivors, advocates, professionals, students. I looked out at all those faces and took a deep breath. "My name is Mia, and I want to tell you about the day a doctor saved my life." I told my story. Not all the details, but the important parts. Growing up with a brother who hurt me and a mother who excused it. The night my ribs were broken. The 3 days I tried to hide it. Walking into that clinic terrified and in pain. Dr. Cartwright's refusal to accept my lies. Her words that changed everything. "You're safe now." For years, I believed that family loyalty meant accepting whatever happened to me. I thought protecting my brother's future was more important than my own safety. I learned to make myself small, to apologize for existing, to believe I deserved whatever treatment I received. But I learned something else. I learned that real love doesn't ask you to stay silent about abuse. Real family doesn't require you to sacrifice your well-being to maintain appearances. And protecting someone else's future should never, ever come at the cost of your own safety. The audience was silent, listening intently. I also learned about forgiveness. Not the kind of forgiveness where you pretend everything is fine and let people back into your life who hurt you, but the kind of forgiveness that frees you from carrying anger like a weight on your shoulders. I forgave myself for not seeing it sooner, for not leaving sooner, for all the years I thought it was my fault. That forgiveness gave me back my life. Today, I'm 29 years old. I have a career I love working to help organizations that support survivors of violence. I have healthy relationships with people who respect me. I have boundaries, and I enforce them. I have a future that I'm building every single day. My brother and I don't speak. Maybe we never will again. And I've made peace with that. Because sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to acknowledge the harm they've caused, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. I paused looking at a young woman in the front row who was crying, nodding along with everything I said. If you're listening to this and you're in a situation like I was, please know this. You deserve safety. You deserve to be heard and believed. You deserve a life free from fear. And speaking up is not betrayal. It's survival. It's self-preservation. It's you finally choosing yourself. The people who truly love you will stand by you when you speak your truth. And if they don't, then they've shown you who they really are. Believe them. Sometimes the family you build is more important than the one you were born into. Sometimes saving yourself is the bravest thing you can do. I stepped back from the microphone. For a moment there was silence. Then the room erupted in applause. People stood clapping, some crying. I saw the young woman in the front row stand up, tears streaming down her face, mouthing "thank you." After the speech, dozens of people came up to talk to me. They shared their own stories, asked for advice, thanked me for being so honest. A few slipped me notes with their contact information, asking if I could speak at their schools or organizations. That evening, I went home to my small apartment. Nathan was there having cooked dinner for us. We ate together, talked about our days, watched a movie. Normal, peaceful, safe. Later, as I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. The woman staring back at me was strong. Scarred, yes, but strong. She'd survived something terrible and come out the other side. She'd chosen herself when it mattered most. She'd built a life worth living. I used to think my worth was measured by how little space I took up, how quietly I could exist, how much I could endure without complaining. Now I know better. My worth is inherent. I don't have to earn it by being small or silent or convenient. I thought about the girl I used to be tiptoeing through her own house apologizing for breathing too loud. I wished I could go back and tell her, "You're going to be okay. It's going to hurt first. It's going to cost you people you thought you couldn't live without." But on the other side of that pain is freedom. On the other side is you fully yourself, no longer shrinking. I turned off the bathroom light and climbed into bed. Tomorrow I had a meeting with a new client, a nonprofit working with teens in abusive homes. I was designing their entire brand identity, including a campaign about recognizing the signs of family violence. Sometimes I still have hard days. Days when I question if I did the right thing. Days when I miss the fantasy of the family I wish I'd had. Days when the phantom pain in my ribs reminds me of everything I've lost and everything I've survived. But then I remember that doctor's office, Dr. Cartwright's steady gaze, her refusal to let me lie, her willingness to see what I'd been trained to hide. Those 3 words, "You're safe now," and "I am safe now." Not just physically, but emotionally. I'm safe from people who would ask me to diminish myself for their comfort. I'm safe from the lie that love requires suffering and silence. I'm safe in the knowledge that I am worthy of protection, of care, of justice. That's what I want everyone to understand. If you're reading this, if you're watching this, if you're living through something similar, you deserve safety. You deserve to be believed. You deserve to choose yourself. And you are not alone. There are doctors like Dr. Cartwright everywhere, people who will see you and believe you. There are counselors like Rachel and social workers like Angela. There are prosecutors like Amanda who will fight for you. There are friends who will stand by you. There are strangers who will become your chosen family. You just have to take the first step. You have to walk into that clinic, that shelter, that police station. You have to say the truth out loud even when you're terrified. You have to choose yourself even when it feels like betrayal. Because it's not betrayal. It's survival. It's self-love. It's the moment you decide your life matters. And your life does matter, every single bit of it. So let me ask you this. If you've made it this far in my story, what's one thing you need to hear today? What's the permission you've been waiting for someone to give you? Drop it in the comments. Let's create a space where we can support each other. And if this story resonated with you, if it helped you feel less alone, or gave you courage, or made you think differently about something, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss future stories. Share this with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for being here. And remember, you're safe now. Maybe not yet, but you can be. You deserve to be. Take care of yourselves. Be gentle with your healing. And never, ever let anyone convince you that your safety matters less than someone else's reputation. Until next time.